Hello, good afternoon, and thank you for staying with us for so long. I'm very excited to present my thesis work with all of you. So, this is a typical view you'd get from your apartment when you're living in Mumbai. It's very similar to New York City with all its tall buildings that cover the sky, the fast paced life, and the densely packed streets. Luckily, I was on the other side. I woke up to this every day, watching the sun set into the water body that harbors mangroves, integral to the ecosystem that is home to so many seasonal animals, made me realize the importance of nature and all her components. Similarly, during my undergrad internship, I chose to immerse myself in a completely different ecosystem, the mountains. I visited a nondescript village nestled amidst the craggy peaks of Kargil. Hunderman settlement is an unusual architecture coexisting with the mountain ranges instead of working against the force of nature, which reminded me that we needed to view nature not as a resource to be extracted, but as a collaborator to work with. Recent capitalistic practices have evolved to become slowly about profits, not realizing the harm they might cause around it. For example, the leather industry, which was traditionally in traditional art, has now become an industry which is estimated to be about 408 billion US dollars. The industry runoff from the leather tanneries affect the waterways that are near them and end up harming the humans inhabiting it. Tannery workers often suffer major chemical burns while handling harsh carcinogenic chemicals in the factory. But what really interested me is the socioeconomic precursors that led to these anthropocentric environmental harms. Real life practices around structures that promote and maintain these social and environmental disparities. Cis hetero white supremacy, colonialism, and modern capitalism are long term ecological processes that disproportionately harm black and brown bodies and the planet. Western Earth and environmental science does not, and as it functions, cannot address these problems. The Critical Ecology Lab aims to deepen our understanding of how these processes shape the society and the planet by giving voice to questions and actions and grounded in a more expansive understanding of global change. So, what are these social drivers of environmental change? Some of these are they're often extractive in nature. That means they value self gain and more than collective good. They have a myopic view of and makes decision without considering long term impacts. They are a scarcity based mindset and view resources as limited and scarce. They're wasteful and individualistic, which prioritize individual rights and freedoms over collective goods and downplay the social and economical impacts of individual actions. Going back to critical ecology, being a microbial ecologist and biogeochemist, Dr. Priya drives a lot of her inspiration from microbes. Another ecology I saw myself being driven towards. Western society took off and ran with the tidy notion that social interactions mirror the perceived ruthlessness of the natural world. But biology is more nuanced than this and is filled with examples of organisms of the same and different species operating cooperatively and patiently. An example of this being SCOBY, a bacterial alternative to the leather industry. SCOBY exists in our daily lives as kombucha, a probiotic beverage that is readily available at most of our corner stores and is a great substrate for SCOBY to grow in. So the liquid here is kombucha, and the gloopy mass on top is SCOBY. Usually seen as waste, my place of work, Slow Factory, a climate justice organization, harnessed the potential of this bacterial world to make 100% biodegradable leather. I would spend my days sometimes having more bacterial interactions than human, making sure the environment was perfect for them to thrive. We'd name them mostly to keep track, but I soon found myself becoming more attuned to the bacterial needs, much like people who start to notice, begin and observe and spend time with this culture. Th- this is a video of me burping my favorite SCOBY, Piper. She was a star SCOBY. In this act of caring beyond myself and gendered values that you see common in people who engage in such acts, like the kombucha community. Values that show up are also directly related to the processes of growth and properties of SCOBY. It's infinitely regenerative. So a lot of urge to share appears to be a common behavioral pattern, resulting from SCOBY being treated as a superfluous commodity. Since the process is slow and takes methodical steps to keep the culture living, people often have found a newfound appreciation for slower processes. This is a multi-species symbiotic event. People also describe with emphasizes the importance of collaboration. Feelings of being interconnected to the bacterial world arose, and you have to be attentive to the well-being of this living culture. These bacterial values stood starkly against the existing processes of making the same product, which made me question how might we realize the potential of bacterial world to harness them and move away from existing extractive practices. Through my secondary research, Through my secondary research, I conducted semi structured interviews and focus groups with material scientists that worked with kombucha in different forms and home brewers that have been brewing kombucha from anywhere between a few weeks to a couple of months. I realized that even though kombucha has become common, people don't recognize the potential of the bacterial culture around it. Since there is minimal chance of engagement with the bacterial culture so as to recognize and notice them in order to realize their potential. My sec- I also realized that there was another insight that information around and innovation around this material looks much like these screenshots over here, which end up stifling innovation near this region. Initially, I was speaking to kombucha consumers to reintroduce the beverage as a means of engaging with the bacterial world through a brew book, but soon learned that learning how to take care of the bacterial culture for the first time on your own is an information overload and people needed to be guided through workshopping with them. Which brings me to my second prototype, which was an entirely online workshop among home brewers that gives them a better understanding of SCOBY and to provide them with space to engage in resources about different uses with SCOBY. I did not want them to give a final product, but instead give a better understanding of the material so that they can bring in their lived experiences to explore different uses of this culture. Both of these led to my final intervention, an approach for practitioners to teach biomaterials to introduce behavioral change called the culture of culture. I sought to bacterialize human culture by introducing the properties of SCOBY in the process of caring for your SCOBY by creating a fun character that embodied them. This helped the participants to actually be friends with the bacteria and fostered a feeling of kinship while also dismantling negative connotations associated with bacteria. The second part aimed to provide inspiration and technique about biomaterial solutions. I demonstrated a dyeing process that gave space for participants to interact with the material in this process by providing participants with prompts and discussions to encourage them to glean from the bacterial world and realize how they can implement these practices and values in their lives, giving rise to feeling of being interconnected and collaboration. The last part involved providing participants with a booklet that served them a space for reflection on their journey with growing and interacting with SCOBY, while also providing them a good culture to take back with them. As feedback, somebody mentioned there is much more magic waiting for us to explore outside human society. Bring me to away from the human centralized mindset for a while. As Robin Wall Kimmerer said, other small beings issue an invitation to dwell for a time right at the limits of ordinary perception. All it requires for us is attentiveness. Look in a certain way, and a whole new world will be revealed. This work wouldn't have been possible without all these wonderful beings, both humans and non humans. I am so grateful for all of you being here. Thank you for sticking with me. Thank you, Mia. Thank you, Sahar. Thank you, Mari, and all my lovely cohort members. Thank you for people watching. And this is starting to sound like an Oscar acceptance speech. But I hope to continue building world with ecosystems that can coexist. So thank you.